welcome viewers. I am Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. United States and European Union have both announced an agreement on framework for reciprocal fair and balanced trade. The European Union has kept the digital sector out of current talks and aims to lower US car tariffs to 15% from the 1st of August. Now, officials are saying that the joint statement is a first step that could expand to cover more sectors over time. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has met his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. Lavrov has stressed upon Russia's interest in expanding joint energy projects as New Delhi faces increased tariffs on the purchase of oil from Moscow. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky states that he expects a strong US reaction if Russian leader Vladimir Putin refuses a bilateral meeting. He notes that it is unclear what territorial concessions Moscow might offer, adding that Budapest as a venue for future talks is challenging. Ukrainian officials say that a Russian attack killed one person and injured at least 18, striking a US electronics manufacturer in Mukashevo. Authorities report 15 have been hurt in a missile strike that destroyed storage facilities, as the region's governor confirmed that the plant produced consumer electronics. The Israeli Defense Forces have stated that they've begun the first steps of their controversial military assault on Gaza City after calling up tens of thousands of reservists. This comes as the Netanyahu government considers a new ceasefire deal accepted by Hamas to pause nearly 2 years of war. Hamas has responded to the start of Israel's new attack on Gaza City, calling it a blatant disregard for efforts to broker a ceasefire and hostage release deal. Critics inside and outside Israel warn that the new offensive will endanger hostages, displace hundreds of thousands, and worsen an already dire humanitarian crisis. Uganda has signed an agreement with the United States to accept nationals from third countries who fail to gain asylum in America. The deal comes as US President Donald Trump wishes to deport millions of illegal immigrants, including sending some to South Sudan and Eswatini. US President Donald Trump's administration has imposed sanctions on 2 judges and 2 prosecutors at the International Criminal Court over the arrest warrant issued for Israeli officials. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio called the court a national security threat and an instrument of lawfare against the US and Israel. All right, viewers, those were the headlines, and our crucial focus remains on a key meeting that has taken place in Moscow. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has met India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. He has stated that India and Russia have achieved good results in energy cooperation, and Moscow is interested in further joint energy projects with New Delhi. This comes as Dr. S. Jaishankar met Lavrov, and earlier he also met Russia's first Deputy Prime Minister Denis Manturov in order to reaffirm the close partnership between these 2 countries. Reportedly, Moscow and New Delhi have talked up their strategic partnership since US President Donald Trump earlier this month announced higher tariffs on imports from India because of its purchase of Russian oil. Let's in fact listen in to what the Russian Foreign Minister had to say.
У нас хорошие результаты в сотрудничестве в сфере углеводородов, поставки российской нефти на индийский рынок. И у нас обоюдная заинтересованность в том, чтобы реализовывать совместные проекты по добыче энергоносителей, в том числе в Российской Федерации, на Дальнем Востоке и на Арктическом.
All right, there of course we heard what Sergei Lavrov had to say, even as India and Russia are bolstering ties. Meanwhile, joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Gleb Volkov, international affairs expert. He's joining us live from Moscow. Thank you very much for taking out time and speaking to us on the broadcast. A very crucial summit has taken place in Moscow today itself. We've seen Dr. Jaishankar and Sergei Lavrov meet. They've interacted. They've held a very, very crucial meeting where energy cooperation has been the key thrust, the key focus. Moscow, of course, and New Delhi have had energy pacts with regards to the nuclear projects in the past as well. And meanwhile, now, of course, ties are looking towards further convergences. How do you view this?
Good afternoon. Delhi and Moscow have had a very long history of collaborating on all different fronts, from military collaboration to scientific to cultural. So I think given that both countries are key members of the BRICS alliance, I think this collaboration will continue, will increase, should increase, because I think both countries have a lot to offer to each other. So even in the wake of the threats of the US sanctions, I think this collaboration will still continue. Probably will be, amended slightly, to make sure that it's not directly hit by the sanctions. But ultimately, I don't think there is anything in this world that can stop Russia and India, from further collaboration.
Absolutely. India and Russia's ties are far-reaching, and obviously we enjoy a lot of historical warmth as well as friendship. Meanwhile, India has consistently since day one maintained that it's important for dialogue and discussion to take place. PM Modi has emphasized that this is not an era of war. Where do you see the war headed to next? Because there are now reports circulating that Budapest is being eyed as a location for a possible Putin, Trump, Zelensky trilateral to take place. Do you think this will fructify?
Well, in my view, Hungary is certainly a better suited place than Switzerland. That was, as was originally suggested, I think, by Macron, because Hungary has, over these years has taken, a more benevolent stance towards Moscow, supporting a lot of Russia's initiatives and staying neutral as far as the war is concerned. So by all means, I think Budapest would be a better suited place. Again, I will repeat myself from our previous session. I think Hungary is a party to the international ICC International Court agreement. So this will need to be waived in order to allow for Mr. Putin and the delegation to go there.
All right. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX. Meanwhile, viewers, we're shifting focus to the Middle East. We're learning that Israeli airstrikes have hit the central Gaza city of Deir al-Balah after the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged an immediate ceasefire, warning that Israel's push to seize Gaza city could lead to mass displacement and civilian casualties. This comes after Israel's military has said that it has begun the first steps of a major operation to capture Gaza city. Now, according to reports, troops are holding the outskirts and tens of thousands of reservists have been called up, with full deployment expected in September. The war is now in its second year. It has killed more than 62,000 Palestinians. Now, this information is according to Gaza health officials. Meanwhile, we do know that 1,200 Israelis were killed in Hamas's October 2023 attack that ignited this conflict. Meanwhile, joining us on the broadcast is Ali Abushbak. He's an independent Palestinian researcher. He's joining us from Cairo. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. Netanyahu is still doubling down on his quest to level Gaza city. He's called up his reservists as well. He is not backing down despite Hamas finally agreeing to a ceasefire deal and a hostage exchange as well. In fact, experts have warned that an offensive, that an all-out offensive such as this could even harm the hostages. 62,000 people in Palestine have lost their lives up until now. Where do you see the war headed next? Is there any hope for a ceasefire? Apologies, there's an audio issue at your end, Mr. Abushbak. We'll try to get that rectified. We'll try to get your audio and we'll try to get your perspective on what exactly is taking place in Gaza at the moment. But you can clearly see those visuals on your screens, even as the UN chief is calling for ceasefire. There are protests taking place within Israel as well. And the death toll has passed 62,000. Netanyahu is continuing his offensive. Israel's military has become the first steps of a major operation to capture Gaza City. Troops, according to reports, are holding the outskirts, and tens of thousands of reservists have been called up with full deployment expected in September. We're now learning that Israeli airstrikes have hit the central Gaza city of Deir al-Balah. This comes after UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has urged an immediate ceasefire, warning that Israel's push to seize Gaza could lead to mass displacement and civilian casualties as well. Remember, it's been 2 years since the war has commenced, but Israel has now begun an offensive on Gaza City. It's called up more than 60,000 reservists in its plan to expand the war and seize Gaza City. Meanwhile, in the latest, we are learning that Deir al-Balah in central Gaza City has been hit by an Israeli airstrike. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz had approved these plans earlier itself to begin these operations in some of the most densely populated areas. All right, viewers, that's all we have for now, but more developments are coming in. We're now learning that as Israel is intensifying its operations in Gaza, family members of Israeli hostages in Israel itself are calling for the return of those remaining in captivity. The families are protesting for a ceasefire. The IDF military a day earlier had called up 60,000 reservists in a sign that the government was pressing ahead with the plan to capture, to seize Gaza City despite international condemnation. Although one military official stated that most reservists would not serve in combat and that the strategy to take Gaza City had not yet been finalized, the Israeli government has restated that all of the remaining 50 hostages held by militants in Gaza must be released at once. Israeli officials believe that around 20 of them are still alive. Let's in fact listen in to what a family member, one of the hostages, has had to say.
There's a deal on the table. This is the opening we need for a comprehensive deal. We must sign it immediately. We welcome every hostage who returns and every family reunites with their loved ones. Time is running out. The hostages cannot survive much longer in the hand of these brutal captors. We cannot support more fighting.
All right, viewers, you've heard what exactly one of the family members of the hostage has had to say. Meanwhile, human rights groups are warning that a humanitarian crisis could worsen in Gaza, where most residents have been displaced multiple times and neighborhoods lie in ruins. The starvation deaths, in fact, continue to rise amid the threat of wide-scale famine. Meanwhile, an Israeli military official has informed that a new phase of combat would involve a gradual, precise and targeted operation in and around Gaza City, including some areas where forces had not previously operated. The military has already begun operating in the neighborhoods of Zaytun and Jabalia as part of the initial stages. Residents are bracing for the worst as Israel pursues its plan to seize Gaza's largest city. This operation could, of course, as experts warn, displace hundreds of thousands of people, 2 concentration zones in the south of Gaza. Meanwhile, Ali Ushbak is back with us on the broadcast. He's joining us from Cairo. Thank you so much for your patience as we got that connection sorted out. I was, of course, asking you of the fears that the people on the ground have currently. They are worried about where exactly will they get the next meal from, even as bombardment continues and now Israeli troops are on the ground as well. Do you think even in such a delicate scenario, ceasefire can be reached? Is there any hope for that? Or do you think there can be some US pressure to get that done? Or with Putin being focused on Russia and Ukraine, do you think Netanyahu has more of a free hand given by the US president and therefore the chances are bleak?
Thank you, Pia, for having me. In fact, the situation on the ground, it's a terrible. Yesterday night, it was tough for the Palestinian who's staying in the Gaza city, while the Israeli artillery bombed a northern part of the Gaza city from Jabalia and from the Jabalia campus, as well as at Daraj and Hayat Tufah neighborhood in the southeast of Gaza city, while Israel is talking on the media about the second phase of Gideon's chariot has been started, as well as today, according to Palestinian media, local media, around 91 Palestinian civilians have been killed, among of them 30 civilians who's seeking for food have been killed as well as. So on the ground situation is difficult, as you mentioned. Also, Israel's focus on the central of Gaza Strip from in Deir al-Balah as well as al-Nusayrat and also al-Braj neighborhood. Israel's bombardment, it's still continuous on the ground. Civilians they lost their hope for the ceasefire, despite Hamas agreed that the ceasefire that put the proposal that put by the mediator Egypt and Qatar, and they are up to now, even Palestinian as well as Israeli, they are waiting for the response of Benjamin Netanyahu. He's trying to buy the time by delaying in his response about the ceasefire. But I guess the backstabbing of this proposal, it was clear yesterday when Benjamin Netanyahu, he was called for more than 60,000 Israeli reservists to participate in the war in Gaza, to continue that second phase of Gideon's chariot operation in Gaza. Yesterday, we have seen a strong and bloody resistance from the Palestinian militant. It's worth mentioning that about Khan Yunis ambush, with Israel consider it as a fail for its troop on the ground and around, at least according to media, Israeli media, more than 10 Israeli have been killed during this ambush. So it's a situation on the ground. It's a bit difficult to understand what is happening, but it's clear Benjamin Netanyahu is not going to accept the new proposal and that put it by Egypt and Qatar. It's also clear for the Israeli community as well, despite they are pressurizing Benjamin Netanyahu and the opposition of Benjamin Netanyahu. Lapid, he released a statement that he's going to cover and to save the Israeli coalition if it's going to collapse, if he's going through this deal and to release the hostages from Gaza. He said that he's ready to coalesce with Benjamin Netanyahu's government in case that Smotrich and Benefir, they are going to withdraw from this government. He said there is around 24 Israeli seats from the cabinet. They are going to support the Benjamin Netanyahu is going, in case he's going to accept the deal and accept this 60 days of ceasefire with Hamas and exchange the hostages and the Palestinian prisoner in Israel jail. So also that the proposal, it's, as I mentioned yesterday, it's aligned with the Witkoff proposal. Also Hamas, it's clear with this, and it's showing its flexibility with the negotiation, while Benjamin Netanyahu is still insist about devastating Hamas for a totally control Gaza, despite the international community warned Benjamin Netanyahu with regard this step and this plan. It's considered as a catastrophe, not for Palestinian, it's for human and the human rights. Pia, situation on the ground, more than around 100,000 civilians, they obligated to displaced from the area that pursuing for the Israelis attack and Israelis bombardment, like At-Tufah neighborhood, like Az-Zatoun neighborhood, like Jabalia city and Jabalia campus, all of them displaced to other area, despite there is no fuel to transfer from North Gaza to South Gaza. So it's created a huge problem for the civilians and a huge challenge for them to survive. Among of these crises for displacement, that the famine is still in Gaza. Israel, according to the Secretary General of United Nations, Guterres, he confirmed that Israel used food as a weapon and it's using the public or
Indeed, and concerns are, as you rightly pointed out, concerns are mounting at this point of time, especially with the looming famine. I'd like to thank you for taking out time, speaking to us on NewsX World, of course, highlighting the delicate situation in the Middle East and Gaza City in particular. Meanwhile, viewers, we're shifting our focus to some other updates coming in. We're now learning that the United States and European Union have announced a framework trade deal aimed at lowering tariffs and easing market tensions. European Commission Vice President Maros has stated that the EU proposal this month would reduce US car tariffs down to 15%, retroactive from 1st August. He called today's joint statement with Washington a first step that could expand over time to cover more sectors. From the White House, officials confirmed that the United States will cap tariffs on EU originating goods like pharmaceuticals, semiconductors and lumber at no more than 15%. They added that the EU will provide preferential treatment for US seafood and agriculture while eliminating tariffs on all US industrial goods. Both sides hailed the framework as a balanced agreement designed to bring relief to multiple industries and reset transatlantic trade ties as well. Joining us on the broadcast is Peter Cardillo. He's the Chief Market Economist at Spartan Capital Securities. He's joining us live from New York. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX. A landmark agreement has been reached between the United States and the European Union. Of course, the Trump tariff threats have been looming since April itself, and now it seems that there's been a slight relief for the European Union. The tariffs on cars will be reduced to 15%. Other important sectors as well, such as the pharmaceutical sector, the semiconductor sector, lumber, all of these also will be facing relief as tariffs will be capped at no more than 15%. How do you think this will impact US trade with nations in the European Union? What sort of boost are we likely to see?
Well, I think, first of all, it's good news, but it also bears some bad news. And the bad news is that, you have a framework of 15%. That's going to tack on inflation, and that's going to raise prices. So it's good news and it's bad news. Obviously, the Europeans have agreed to this, and I think that they really didn't have much choice, so they would be facing 30 or 35%. So they basically agreed to the lesser of the two evils, and it's good news in terms of the United States of trade, but also it means higher prices, and that means higher inflation, and that could be a problem for the Federal Reserve.
All right, thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us at NewsX World. Meanwhile, viewers, we're shifting focus to some other Key developments coming in. Russia's Pacific Fleet launched cruise and anti-ship missiles during drills in the Sea of Japan that also involved aircrafts and drones. The Russian Defense Ministry stated that Kalibr and Uran missiles were fired by the Marshal Shaposhkino 5 frigate in the Sea of Japan, and the sailors successfully hit their target. This is according to the Russian Defense Ministry. The maneuver was carried out by ships and vessels of the Pacific Fleet as well as the fleet's naval aviation aircraft and drones. The Defense Ministry of Russia released footage of the frigate launching the missiles. Now, reports earlier this month suggested that there's growing willingness in Japan to loosen its decades-old pledge not to produce, possess or host nuclear weapons in its territory. What is known as the 3 non-nuclear principles. Joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Roger Liu. He is an assistant professor at the National Sun Yat-sen University in Kaohsiung in Taiwan. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. What do you make of this crucial development that has taken place off the coast of Japan?
Thank you for having me. Well, I will suggest that we look at this event as part of the series of military drills conducted by Russia in this area for a long time. I think this is, well, of course, a lot of people would like to interpret it as a response to Japan's intention to change the 3 non-principles. However, I will say that, well, last time during the commemorate anniversary of the 80th year of the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba actually reaffirmed that Japan will try to stick to its 3 non-principles. So I think judging from the domestic politics of Japan, it is still, the Japanese government still faces some pressure to change its non-nuclear policies. So I would like to view this as a routine military drill of Russia in this region. And we have to pay attention to this, that Russia has been doing that alone, by itself, by the Russian Navy only. In the recent military exercise done, it's called the Joint Sea 2025. It's done by China and Russia in the Sea of Japan, and it's much larger than before. And before that, there is an anti-submarine drill between also Russia and China. And well, what we have seen here is that China and Russia would like to do it all together. But now we only see Russia doing that alone. So we will have to see whether Russia has been expanding its military drills to cover other countries, to work with other allies in the region, say North Korea and China, or if it is doing that alone, actually we can view this as an improvement even after the Putin-Trump talk taking place in Alaska.
All right, thank you so much for taking out time, Mr. Roger Liu, and speaking to us on NewsX World. Well, viewers, due to paucity of time, it's a wrap on this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.